Hey everyone, my name is Femi Ayanbadejo, 11-year NFL veteran, Super Bowl champion with the Baltimore Ravens, Johns Hopkins graduate, and I'm the founder and CEO of HealthReel, and I'm on the game plan. Let's work.
So Femi, let's start with the fact that you were an undrafted player that made it 11 years in the NFL, which I think not a lot of NFL players that are undrafted can say. Talk to us a little bit about how you made the NFL work for you and where you found that drive to sort of keep it going where a lot of people have not been able to.
I think, people always ask me the question, how'd you get so disciplined? What are the things that you, pulled from mentors and different people that helped you find the drive, discipline, and work ethic to be an NFL player? And to be honest, I've always been a type A kid, made my bed every day, did my laundry, put it away, clean the dishes after I cook before I eat. That's my personality type. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't taught to me. I just always been that way. I know I'm an odd bird. I'm just an odd character that way, So I think that it wasn't so much that I conformed to the NFL. My factory settings were made for the NFL. My factory settings are made to be a grinder and to follow a disciplined methodology, a certain methodology with things, and understand that regiment's important. Now, when you need to break away, you need to break away, and I'm also able to do that. But I do think that there's a certain stick-to-itiveness and grind that I've always had that's kind of inherent in who I am, and I really think that fits very well with the type of time and grind it takes to become a professional athlete.
As you're going through this, you're finding your factory settings are made for the NFL. You're finding yourself thriving within this environment, even though you're not coming from necessarily the path that some of these other players come from. At what point during that 11-year journey did you start to think about what came next for you?
That's a good question. And let me go back a little bit. Although I wasn't drafted, drafted, I think that you hit the nail on the head in regard to competition. I love to compete, and I love all the things that come with being a professional athlete. And a lot of those qualities and character traits translate really well to entrepreneurship, by the way. You know what I mean? So I think that probably halfway through my NFL career, I had a pretty good idea that human performance in some capacity, nutrition, recovery, supplementation, biohacking, all these Eastern philosophy medicine blending with Western philosophy medicine, I knew somewhere along the way that I was going to traverse that path. How I would get there, what I would do exactly, I didn't know. But I found that I spent probably a third of my time with the doctors and the practitioners and the trainers. The other 2/3 with my teammates, of course, but I did pick the brains of these world-class practitioners and doctors because I wanted to understand certain things about biology and physiology and kinesiology and how recovery works, and cortisol and testosterone and growth hormone and all these different things that allow an athlete to be world class, right? Those things, those hormones, right? They, at some point, they start to dissipate, they start to drop. It's called aging, right? And I've always wanted to understand how to slow that process. My brother and I would always make this joke like, hey, we got to live to at least be 100. How do we do it? You know what I mean? How do we do it the right way? And I think that there's a component to exercise as there is to nutrition. There's a certain methodology. I keep using that word. When it comes to, and I'll use exercise real quickly, the most important thing about exercise is frequency. The next important thing about exercise is duration. And the least important thing is intensity. People have it backwards. I'm going to kick my own ass for an hour in 90 minutes or 3 hours, and then they don't do it again for another week. Well, that's not the the fountain of youth, if you may. It's not that. What the fountain of youth is I'm going to walk every day for 35 minutes. Every day for as long as I live, I'm going to walk for 35 minutes. You'll get much more out of that than getting your ass kicked in a high intensity, interval class for 2 hours a week. You'll live much longer walking 35 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day. And so I wanted to figure out, and when it comes to nutrition, it's all about how much you eat, what you eat, not so much when you eat. We learn that over time. We have all this misinformation out about exercise and nutrition and things like this. So it took me a long time to really figure out what was fact and what was fiction. But once I started to figure out that really our behaviors and our daily habits are the fountain of youth. They either prolong our life or they shorten our lives. And I've learned this. And my goal, and which we'll get into, I'm sure, my platform and kind of like the real background as to why I've done what I've done, is because I want people to be the best version of themselves as quickly as they can for as long as they can. That's ultimately my goal. And so I started thinking about that in my teens, but really putting it to action into work, probably, as you said, halfway through my NFL career, toward the end of my career, I knew that I was going to probably collaborate with some folks and found some type of a fitness business, whether it was a gym or nutrition or personal training or some combination of all of it, and which is what I ended up doing. But it did start probably halfway through my NFL career, and I had a pretty good inkling that it would be somehow linked to the human performance space.
Yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper on the bit about founding your own gym and fitness space. What was that experience like for you? And what within that experience led you to say, oh, I want to go a bit deeper. There's something bigger here than operating this gym and working on the personal training side?
Yeah, good question. So I think that what I really found myself getting excited about is the business side of it at first, right? We found a space. We had to hire a construction team to come in and build it out, right? We had to negotiate the lease terms. We had to purchase equipment that we financed, right? We had multiple partners. We all shared equity. We had to come up with a strategy on the different pieces of the business we would all manage. I'd never really had to do that before. It was all kind of new to me. I went from being a 21-year-old to playing 11 years in the league. And then before I knew it, I was 33, 34. And now I'm in business with people, like really operating a business for the first time in my life. So some of that was really new for me. And I really did enjoy being on the other side of the fence. And what I mean by that, from being the athlete with the team of practitioners helping me to being the practitioner helping the athlete or just the general person who wanted to be more fit, right? And so after about 4 years of being the trainer, doing the nutritional guidance piece of it, being the counselor, being the advisor, at some point in there around 2011, 12, probably 2 years in, Fitbit and Garmin came online with their products. And when I started seeing the rise of the digital health space, that's when the light bulb went off. And I said, why should I help 500 people when I can help 500,000? And that's when I really started thinking about pivoting from the brick and mortar space to the digital health space.
Yeah. And so you went on to get your MBA, which I assume is tied to that kind of decision. Absolutely. And pivot.
Yeah.
Did that require a lot of humility, or what kind of emotions went through your mind when you applied and then, actually went to school?
That's such a great question. I think that you have to humble yourself anytime you start from kind of zero, right? And I had to humble myself to go into the fitness business as a personal trainer. You know what I mean? I had to humble myself as a nutrition programmer. And I think that what really energized me is an experience I had at Stanford. I went to an immersion program at Stanford. It was a 1-week program sponsored by the NFL at Stanford's GBS, Graduate Business School. And our keynote speaker the first night was Condoleezza Rice. And I believe she's still a professor there now. She was faculty at the time. This is 2012. And Condi Rice and I had a really long talk. See, I'm calling her Condi because we're homies, we're friends, like we're tight, you know what I mean? I can do that, right? So Mrs. Rice and I had this talk about what motivated me and how did I get from where I was to where I wanted to be. And my first thought was I wanted to go to Stanford, but that would be selfish. I had 2 kids at the time. They were in Maryland. I played for the Ravens. They were born and raised here in Baltimore. When I wasn't in San Diego, I was in Baltimore. How do I rationalize as a parent who wanted to be better going to Stanford in Palo Alto? Although it's close to Santa Cruz where I grew up, that doesn't help my kids. That just puts me, in some ways, it puts me further away for a longer duration of time because now I'd be in school full time, right? I had the idea, well, Hopkins is basically, in the backyard. If I can get into Hopkins from a brand recognition standpoint, you just put Hopkins up there with any university in the world, I think it would stand up. And so the first mistake people made is they doubted I'd get in, which anytime someone says I'm not going to do something, of course I go and do it, right? So of course I got in. to the business school. And in 2014, I sold the equity in my business. I basically deployed the strategy that Condoleezza Rice and I kind of on a piece of paper, just kind of laid out: go back to grad school, focus on your MBA, focus on digital health because that's what excites you. All these products that you see coming online in the digital health space excite you. Just get there, start building and start creating and see what you come up with. That's literally what the plan was. And I'd be closer to my kids, which was like kind of a double whammy. So that's what prompted me to go to Hopkins. This discussion, this opportunity through Stanford and the NFL was jet fuel. My partners and all my friends and my family, I'd moved my mom to San Diego at that point. Everybody was really supportive of this change that I wanted to make. They didn't know if I had lost my mind or if I was going to do something amazing. I'm not sure if they were sure. They're like, "You're going to do what? You're going to go where? Okay, well, go. Good luck. Sounds like you know what you're going to do, right?" So anyway, that's what kind of fueled it and propelled it. This idea that I could help more people digitally than I could, physically in a brick and mortar space. And I was excited about this burgeoning space that I knew, and I started studying AI and machine learning right around the same time. I knew that would play some role in what I was going to end up building. So from 2014 to 2016, I was a full-time student at Hopkins. Definitely was humbling in some ways, but it was what I needed. I think a lot of athletes think that, I don't think athletes think this. I think people analyzing athletes think this, that we think we should get jumped to the front of the line all the time, like we're at some club in Vegas and we just walk in the front door. You know what I mean? That's not how it works in the real world. And I don't think any of us actually want that. We want to learn. We want to, most professional athletes have an entrepreneurial gene in them or spirit within them that they want to create, they want to build, they want to be hands-on, they want to be involved in things. And so I wanted to go through a rigorous business school program that I could fine tune and get that, that real world in the classroom experience that I hadn't had basically since, I graduated from San Diego State. I will say this, just to make sure that I was on the right track, I did go back to SDSU, to San Diego State, for a semester, and I studied microeconomics. I took 2 microeconomics classes, really, really difficult classes. I was a psychology major, not a business major, and I loved it. And I thought, if I love microeconomics, then I'm going to love business school. And I loved it, and I loved it. So it all worked out from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you definitely earned some fans there. We were reading an op-ed that your Carey School of Business professor wrote in the Baltimore Sun, I think back in 2016. And allow me to quote from it. He said, "If Femi's performance in the business world is anything like it was in the NFL and in business school, he will grind out a win no matter what it takes." So that's high praise from one of your professors. Help us understand a little bit. You mentioned earlier that there are a lot of similarities between being an athlete and being in the business world. Talk to us about some of the things before we get into HealthReel specifically that you've brought from your NFL days into now the full contact sport of being a startup CEO.
Yeah, I think that the late, great Dennis Green, who was my first NFL coach with the Minnesota Vikings and then also coached me again with the Arizona Cardinals, he always said that, you have to be prepared for everything. It doesn't matter if the plane's late, doesn't matter if the bus is late, doesn't matter if the food's cold, doesn't matter if you get a stomach ache, doesn't matter if there's a fire drill. You need to get up and be prepared for whatever happens. And I think being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of that kind of hurry up and wait. People tell you one thing, they do another. There's also a part of it being team building, right? One of the cool things about being in the NFL is that you have to rely on your teammates as well. So there's this kind of confluence of all these odd things that happens in sports. Some of it's unpredictable, some of it's very regimented, and there's some unpredictability within the time intervals, right? You don't know what's going to happen with the weather. You don't know if someone's going to get hurt on Friday. They've been prepping all week, and you got to step in. The business world is very similar. Business school is not like that. I feel like business school is very much like practice. It's right on time. You know what you're going to get. You know what to expect. But once you step out of the business school and into the business world, now it's open to all the different things that can happen on a day-to-day basis. And you just have to be prepared. You have to stay even keel. You have to really take the time to understand the skill sets of the people that you're interacting with. And if they can deliver on the deliverable that you're requesting and need, right? I've numerous times in my entrepreneurial career with HealthReel have looked at hiring or collaborating with people, and then as I peel back the layers, I realize their skill set's just a little left or right to what I need. You know what I mean? And this partnership may not work because it just doesn't quite fit. And unfortunately, you've got to back your way out of that with respect and kindness, of course, and humility, and say, hey, you know what? I thought this was going to work. Like, you're a great person, but what you do and what I do doesn't actually fit together. And sometimes you think something doesn't fit, and then you dig in, and guess what? You find out that it's great. You know, there's some synergy there, and then you try to work to see what you can do with people. So there's definitely an unpredictableness in sports, and especially competition. And there's some of that unpredictability in business too, especially when it comes to fundraising as well, and different things that you encounter as an entrepreneur. A lot of times you need things from people when you're a startup, and they may not necessarily need you, but you've got to convince them that you have value. So there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, I think, one of the hardest lessons that people coming from the business world, let's say working in corporate, then go into the startup world. And as you were talking about starting at ground zero, starting at, a level of humility, it's, one of the hard lessons to learn. Let's talk about HealthReel specifically. So you told us that, you went from the brick and mortar side to now seeing, look, you want to go from 500 people to 500,000 people. Talk to us about the early days of HealthReel, how it came together into the idea that it is today. Let's start there.
Yeah. So one of the beauties of going to Hopkins is that you can get meetings with amazing organizations. And so I got a chance to meet NASA. NASA has a technology transfer arm. A lot of US laboratories do, but most citizens don't know that. So one of my professors introduced me to NASA technology transfer. And I thought the first thing that would give me a head start is partnering with an amazing organization that has cachet, brand recognition. When people hear NASA, they think big, they think amazing, they think otherworldly, right? So I kind of thought, well, hey, NASA has all this IP that they've created for the space program or other, and they haven't deployed it for whatever reason, but maybe there's something there in this kind of virtual portfolio that I can license and I can deploy, I can, commercialize in a way that'll give me a leg up on the competition. I was already kind of thinking that route. And I knew that what I wanted to build was going to involve body composition and health, and assessing health and disease risk, as well as giving guidance around nutrition and metabolic insights, how someone's metabolism burns and how many calories they burn a day. Because all these things really are inputs in kind of our health outcomes, if that makes sense. And so what I ended up doing was I believe at the time, and I think I still am, the first athlete, retired or active, to ever sign a technology transfer license with NASA. So I did that. So NASA has one of the data points in our platform is calculated through a NASA algorithm that's embedded into the platform. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to give people a quick, on-demand, accurate assessment of their current health using a smart device, whether it's a tablet, an iPad, an iPhone, an Android phone, something that they could basically create a profile using demographic data. They would upload a video through the platform, and our AI, which we actually have numerous patents on a neural network kind of computer vision facing algorithm combined with a machine learning algorithm, which together produce this health assessment. And it literally takes a couple minutes to do it. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on giving people a better understanding of how their body composition, which basically means their body fat, right, is either in a healthy place or in an unhealthy place, right? And we know that in the US, about 70 to 75% of Americans are overweight or obese, right? And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to help give people insight on where their health is today, and if they weren't where they're supposed to be, how do they get there? And that's kind of where the nutritional piece comes in, right? So we answer 4 basic questions for people. Where's my health at today? We give you a body fat percentage calculation. We also tell you where you should be. We also tell you where your ideal body weight should be. And then ultimately we give you kind of a prescription around nutrition, around caloric intake. These are the number of calories a day that you burn. These are the number of calories a day you should be eating. And the goal really, and the way that people lose weight, is by eating less calories than they burn. That's called a caloric deficit. And what we wanted to do is help people understand that you're not at a deficit. You need to get at a deficit. If you get at a deficit, your disease risk numbers go down. Your overall health score goes up. You become healthier, right? Increasing life expectancy, adding all these positives to your life, right? I think there's a very a nebulous kind of cloud around nutrition and fitness because there's so much misinformation out there. And one of the cool things is with our company is that if you're a professional athlete and you're fit, we'll keep you fit. If you're a type 2 diabetic or you're overweight or obese, we'll get you fit. We are fitness agnostic. We don't care where you are on the healthy spectrum. We'll keep you there or get you there. The other thing is that we are diet agnostic, and from the standpoint that we don't care if you are a flexible eater, if you're a keto dieter, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, we don't care about that at all. We basically look at calories from a macronutrient standpoint: fat, proteins, carbohydrate. We tell you exactly how many of those a day you should be eating. It's on you to figure out how to put your nutrition program together, right? I know I'm getting into a very esoteric world right now. I'm going down a rabbit hole a bit, but
no, this is fantastic.
Yeah. But the cool thing about the platform is that not only is it information, but it's also education. So we make sure that we put everything into layman's terms, and every direction we give you, we tell you why it's important that you do it. And so one of the things that COVID has done for my company is that it's really allowed us to take the time to look at who are the, if we look at all the customer baskets, who are the two most important customers. The first customer that's really important is that DIY person, right? The person who says, I don't need help, I can do it myself. We'll give you the information, you go ahead and do it. You got it, go ahead and take over. There's millions of people that can do that right now. The other customer that's really important is the personal trainer, the nutritionist, the coach who is working at a gym who doesn't have a job now. They're looking all over the place to find people. Guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna be like Uber or TaskRabbit or Upwork. We're gonna find the trainer that needs the customer, we're gonna put them together, right? And so the cool thing is that our two most important customers on our roadmap are going to be the do-it-yourself person who doesn't need somebody and the trainer who says, I'm looking for work, right? Because the cool thing is that you may think you don't need help, but when we put it right there in front of you and we say this person is a specialist at this particular thing and you need that, we believe that over time at some point, you'll say, hey, I'll take a session with that person. I'll have a conversation with that person. It's all virtual, it's all digital, it's painless, it's pretty low cost. I can do it for a half an hour. So I won't get too deep into the business model, but I think that COVID really forced us to look at where the opportunities lie. And COVID has only enhanced our value. It hasn't decreased it at all, because think about how many people are at home right now. And once again, it was Zika, it was H1N1, SARS, MERS, COVID, right? There's all these things. These things aren't going away, right? So I think that there's some component, or at least a fraction of people, that are going to be a little leery about jumping right back into the brick and mortar health and fitness space. They may stay home for a while, and they may choose to do everything virtually. Because guess what we've learned? We've learned if you have the right guidance, you can get a lot of stuff done at home if you're motivated.
Yeah, I took that to heart when COVID began, knowing that it was going to go one of two directions for me. Either I was going to get in good shape or it was going to go the other way. I'll say that I'm a big fan of the beta version of your app because I have the 100 fitness score. A little bit of a humble brag.
Yeah.
But I want to go a step deeper on the NASA tech transfer license that you mentioned, being one of the only licensees, former professional athlete. Like, what was the process like to get that license, and how much does that really power your product versus how much other expertise are you either bringing in or hiring?
So Tim, that's a really good question. And I get that question quite a bit. So let me tell you this, the tech transfer process is not hard, actually. I think finding a tech transfer partner is harder than the actual process itself. And just to keep in mind, I think there's 9 or 10 different NASA laboratories. I'm affiliated with the one in Greenbelt here, in Greenbelt, Maryland. Goddard Space Flight Center, but they're all over the place. This isn't the only one, and they all have a tech transfer arm. So I encourage any American citizen that's looking to partner with NASA to go onto their website and just search tech transfer. That's the first thing to do. Second thing is they're going to do a background check on you. They're going to want to know what you want to build. They're going to want to know what you're looking for. They're going to want to know a bit about you and your background. They're going to, of course, make sure you're not crazy, insane, doing crazy stuff. Of course, like as any company that cares about their brand would do. But I was able to pitch them, and I have an amazing relationship with NASA going forward since this agreement that we've made. I'm kind of their resident athlete. Before COVID, I was down in Houston. Houston is where most of the astronauts prep for space flight. So I was down at their space center in Houston, pitching NASA tech transfer to, I think it was 11 current NFL players. I've also pitched it to NBA and former NBA players And there
Yeah,
were
we actually
also,
had, we,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but we had Mason Plumley on the game plan, and
yeah.
he
So
mentioned specifically how
yeah,
impactful that program was.
yeah. So Mason is one of the guys that I talk to. You know, I'm Mason, one of the companies Mason invested in, I work with. You know, so Mason and I made a connection, and you know, he invested in this health, you know, I guess you can call it a digital health company. And now I'm partnered with that company. So indirectly, Mason and I guess you could say we work together, right? But you know, anytime NASA decides to do an NFL, what we call a boot camp, right? And they've done NFL boot camps, they've done NBA boot camps. I'm the resident athlete that they fly in to speak, because athletes always want to see, is there a real person doing this? I'm that living, breathing example. So I love that part. So not only am I a NASA tech transfer partner, but I'm also a partner with NASA in regard to promulgating the tech transfer process. And obviously, you know, as a government agency, NASA doesn't need money. They just want to see Americans and entrepreneurs succeed with their IP. That's really what they care about. If I was to break down the numbers and the costs and what I give NASA to do this, it's fractions of what it's worth. You know what I mean? Like the utility in having NASA sitting at the table with you figuratively. If I ever need something, I can call anytime and get a hold of anybody I need to back me up, to speak to a VC, to speak to a potential investor, to corroborate everything I've experienced in a heartbeat. NASA is great that way. And so from a value standpoint in regard to secret sauce, the truth of the matter is that we created most of our secret sauce in-house with my engineers behind my ideas. Now, NASA has, like I said, we have 20 data points that we provide. The corrected BMI score that you see, that's the data point that NASA provides. Now, if we didn't have that, would that stop us? Absolutely would not stop us. But you know what it does do for us is that when I talk about our company, when I talk about HealthReel as a minority Black-owned company that's partnered with NASA, people listen. So from a brand recognition standpoint, people are going to take a meeting with me because they see NFL, Johns Hopkins, NASA. They're going to give my tech platform a chance because of those relationships that I've built. So it's worth its weight in gold in regard to what it does for me as a company, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's bring it back to you and your journey in HealthReel. So facing with that idea that you wanted to execute on of going from 500 clients to 500,000, seeing this
5 million now, 5 million.
5 million.
5 million now, yeah.
And seeing this technology, but saying, well, hey, I've got to build a product around this. I'm not necessarily a technical founder, a product person. Like, where did you begin to start building out the product of HealthReel?
Yeah, so although I'm not, you know, I wasn't natural to the tech space, I'm a user and consumer of technology. You know what I mean? And I'm also a human performance expert. So when you take what I know and then you take what I've learned in business school with my formal education, I'm going to tell you right now, when you check all the boxes on what I do, there's not a lot of people that can say there's not a lot of people that can say what I can say or have done what I've done. And I say that humbly, but I think in the tech space, you've got to be confident about what you bring to the table. If you waver, people aren't going to believe in you, right? So I'm 100% confident in the confluence of things that I've done. If you just took one of those things, would I be valuable? Probably not. But my background as an early adopter, my background as a personal trainer and nutrition programmer, my background as an athlete, my time at Hopkins, my relationship with NASA, my understanding of physiology, biology, and nutrition, it makes my platform highly valuable because every idea in my platform is mine. I'm not a coder, but I tell the coders what to code up. I tell them what we need to do, and they execute my vision and my dream. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I can code. I can't code a freaking thing. But I do understand what AI can do. I do understand what machine learning can do. I do understand how training data is valuable to any data set. I understand how to analyze a data set. I understand the need for a heterogeneous mix of individuals based on race, age, gender, sex, right? I understand all that stuff because of my background in nutrition. So I'm basically taking something that lives in the real world and I'm converting it to this digital space. And I have people that help me with that. And I'm very honest about what I don't know. And when you're honest about what you don't know, it sets you free to go bring in the people that can do what you can't. And I have no problem admitting that or sharing that with people when I say, hey, I can't do this. I need your help. That's the way I've gone about building this. I really have.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to think about it, and I think it's good advice for any entrepreneurs, which is, you know, it has to start inward first, and you have to establish that baseline with yourself before you can sort of go and actually build forward. I'd like to take maybe a broader view of the landscape, because it is an interesting evolution, and you've been at the forefront of it, seeing the devices that have come out, and that was sort of wave one, where there's these devices, they're tracking basic things, but
Right.
they're not giving you a lot, right?
Right.
Then the next iteration of it is, okay, now it's a little bit more personalized, and we're starting to give you, each device has some own personalization. And it kind of feels like we're in this next wave where the personalization has reached some level of parity, and now it's become about differentiation. So you mentioned, your ability to say, look, NFL, fitness trainer, NASA. I was looking at Chris Hemsworth is doing one where he's got his like training buddies that he does all of his off-season lifts with, and it's like, hey, this is the Chris Hemsworth plan personalized to you. It feels like there are a lot of healthy living apps out there. How do you look at this broader landscape and say, this is where HealthReel plays, this is where we sort of win? And I guess, what is your perspective on where the landscape is headed from here?
Yeah, so you have Peloton out there right now. You have a new company called Tempo who's competing with Peloton, Mirror, and all these different virtual fitness companies that are allowing you to bring the hardware into the home, but they're tech companies, right? You have MyFitnessPal, you have Zero, right, which is an intermittent fasting app. I look at what we do, and I think that we are a perfect partner for all these companies because none of them do what we do. They are health inputs. We assess health outcomes, right? We do what a DEXA scan does. A DEXA scanner is a $150,000 machine. It costs $120 to get a DEXA scan. It'll tell you your body fat, it'll tell you your bone density, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? You have LabCorp, which takes your blood, right, and looks at the different. It looks at your blood glucose, your A1C, your cortisol levels, your hormone levels, all these different things, right? That's another way to look at your health. The way that I see it is that Fitbit and Apple Watch can track sleep, can track steps, can track what's called active metabolic rate, the number of calories you burn. But do any of those things on their own tell you how healthy you are? No, they don't. We actually will tell you how healthy you are. We'll actually tell you if what you're deploying from a fitness standpoint. Remember that frequency, intensity kind of equation, frequency, duration, intensity equation I mentioned earlier. And then when it comes to food, quality of food, amount of food, and frequency of eating, right? These things in and of themselves, none of them tell you how healthy you are ultimately. What we do is we look at your body right now is a snapshot of what you've already done. So we can look at your body shape, your fat mass, and from there we can actually predict where you should be, and it's highly customized based on age and gender. And we can tell you if where you are is where you need to be. And if not, we can tell you to one decimal where you need to be. You know what I mean? We can tell you exactly where you need to be. And then we can tell you how long it'll take to get there, right? And as I mentioned before, not to be redundant, but food is the key to all health outcomes. It's food, 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 food. It's not anything else, right? And so what we really do is we look at how your habits, right? Because when we assess where you are health-wise today, you've already done some amount of work or no work, right? And everything that we guide you on is based on your current activity. So let's assume that you work out 3 times a week. Let's say you don't work out at all. That is embedded into the data that we get from you. So we don't tell you to work out more. We don't tell you to change anything. We just say, hey, based on your output, you're eating too many calories. Or in some cases, some people are underweight. About 8% of the population is actually underweight, believe it or not, a much smaller problem. Even in that case, we tell those people to eat more than they burn, right? So the goal here is, without getting you to change any of your habits necessarily, because we assume that you're not going to, we assume that who you are is who you are now. And the guidance we give you is based on that. But let's assume you were to change your activity. Let's assume you became more active or less active. Well, guess what? In the next report, we're going to pick that up. And the report and the recommendations will change based on what work you've done prior to that assessment.
And so it sounds like you're going to supplement that with experts.
So yeah, the goal here is that for people that want guidance, they will have the ability to basically pick a coach off of one of our, we'll have a tile that says virtual or digital coaching, and you'll be able to access that coach. The other cool thing is that coaches that come on board can bring their customers on board as well. So not only will they be able to source clients, but they'll be able to add their own clients on. And once again, I won't get too deep into the business model, but we want to make sure that we give people, I believe that a human to human interaction is always going to be better than a human doing it on their own. But it's up to us to decide that we want help. So that's the approach that we're taking. I hope I answered your question, Jay, in regard to what's different about HealthReel, right? Once again, we calculate outcomes and provide guidance on where you need to be. I think all these other tools out there, it's just tracking data. And that data in and of itself is nebulous unless you're trying to get somewhere. And unless you're able to track some type of progress from point A to point B, it's great to have this information, but are you deploying it in a way that's making you healthier, or is it just making you feel good, right? We want you to feel good and get healthier. That's the goal.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's about contextualizing the data as well, right? I mean, I wear a sleep tracker, you see Whoop bands, you see all these things. And I think that the challenge for the average person is each of them gives me a score. But when you don't have the context of, okay, is a 74 good or bad, right? A 74 is a C in school, but maybe 74 is actually okay in terms of how I'm sleeping, even though I want to get to a 100, right? And I think that's sort of the challenge of, as investors, Tim and I see a lot of different, especially this year with exactly as you said, a lot of people are working from home, and you're seeing a lot of companies that are saying, okay, look, we want to bring fitness into the home. Here's the different ways we're going to do it. We saw Mirror have a massive acquisition. So I guess the question really becomes, you're now out fundraising, you're, trying to sell, talk to the vision. What's been the most surprising thing for you as you're out speaking to investors about raising capital for HealthReel? Maybe what's been the most surprising process, about the whole fundraising thing in general?
How much they don't understand digital health. Like they understand what's right in front of them, but how little they understand about the evolution of products and what's coming down the pike. So like when Whoop first came out, it wasn't a home run. They had to convince people.
I passed on it.
Yeah. Oh, you passed on it? Oh, wow. Sorry about that, Tim.
But the show often ends up being about my misses. Yeah. So it's fine.
Well, it's all right. Hey, we all have misses, but they had to convince people that heart rate variability and recovery was something important. You're almost selling something, but you're teaching as you sell. And when you're teaching as you sell, it's not always a good position to be in, because people in the VC world, as you know, they think I was about to cuss. They think they know everything. And if something is new to them, that's scary for them. That's high risk to them. What I try to do is I try to tell them a narrative and a story about how we started with horse carriages and buggies, and we moved to cars and planes and, the space shuttle. Well, guess what? I look at HealthReel as kind of that evolution in health and fitness products. A lot of people are using hydrostatic testing. They're using InBody. They're using DEXA scans. They're using bod pod. And these are all different tools that calculate body fat. Some are expensive and difficult and inaccurate. I'm trying to create something that is highly accurate. You can use it safely in your home without anybody touching you, and it's really low cost. But it is the foundation of every health decision that you need to make in regard to nutrition. That's what I've created. And when I tell people that, they're like, wow, that sounds awesome. And then I show them how it works. And then I tell them why it's valuable. Obviously, some people believe in it. The body composition space is probably a little more niche than others. People think that BMI is accurate. BMI is highly inaccurate, especially if you're a big person and an athlete with a lot of muscle. The bigger you are, the less accurate it is for you, right? And so trying to convince people to understand that body fat and body composition is the most robust health data point that you can know about somebody, because if you're overweight or obese, you earned that. That's a lot of bad decisions over time that got you there. If you're fit, it's a lot of good decisions over time that got you there. You can't manipulate body fat or body composition. It is earned over time, and it's difficult to lose body fat, and it's kind of difficult to gain it. Like, you almost have to not know what you're doing to some degree. But clearly we have an epidemic in the United States where heart disease is on the rise, type 2 diabetes is on the rise, COVID finds people that are unhealthy, right? So all these narratives are actually feeding into why HealthReel is valuable, because it is an information and an education tool. And I've got to convince VCs of that, especially VCs that are gray hairs and 50 years old. They don't even use some of these products. They don't even know what MyFitnessPal is. MyFitnessPal is one of the biggest health and fitness products on the planet, and some of them don't even know what it is. How do I convince somebody like that to invest in HealthReel that's moving it even further down the field, right? So that's the biggest kind of thing that I run into, is trying to convince somebody to invest in something that is an area that they don't understand. And if anything, they're more skeptical than excited about it.
So where does that leave you in the fundraising journey, and what are your plans for HealthReel in the near future and for launch?
So I'll tell you right now, I started the company with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money. I did find an early seed round investor. I raised $250,000 about 2 years ago. That's been our lifeblood. And I have good news now. I'm on the cusp of closing our Series A. It should probably close either Friday or Monday. I won't tell you the numbers yet, but I can tell you that it's going to be jet fuel for the company in regard to everything that we want to do. And even if I didn't have an investor, I would take every dollar that I have and I would put it into this company. That's how much I believe in what I'm doing. So one way or another, whether it's plan A, which is closing the Series A, or whether it's plan B, if something just, extraordinary happened and something fell apart, I would still go do what I need to go do. I have a very clear vision on what this company needs to be. And if you want to look to what is close to what we do, but still not quite there, Amazon came out with Halo. And a lot of people would say, aren't you nervous about that? I'm like, no, that's great, because that's giving credence to what I think is something I saw 5 years ago that now big tech is seeing. And so it's a, if anything, it's a network effect. You're going to have people who are going to know who Amazon is that might want to buy Halo, but we know that there's a lot of mistrust in big tech. I want to be a small, transparent company that's highly regarded by its users and customers, and I can be the alternative to an Amazon product. And I think in a lot of ways, and I've studied Halo at a high level, it's my business to study my competition. I honestly think what we do is better than what they do. They're doing what we do, but they're doing it like, first generation. We're like third generation now. We filed patents and IP around this for the first time 3 years ago. So no disrespect to Amazon, but I live and breathe this. They just probably found somebody at Harvard or Stanford or somewhere that said, oh, I can code that up. Now, this is a little bit different when you live it and breathe it. That's what I do.
Well, yeah, if there's anything that's true after, taking a look back at your playing career and then hearing what your professor had to say about you, you're certainly an unstoppable force. So, before we close, one interesting thing or question I have for you is, now that you've been in this as a founder and CEO, what's the thing that you've learned the most about yourself?
So I have a tattoo on my arm that says, character in adversity, humility in prosperity. And you might not be able to see it that well, but I wrote this a while ago. You kind of see that? Mm-hmm. Character and humility. Yeah. Right. And so I wrote that because I wanted to remind myself that you can never get too high or too low. And when things go bad, people are watching. You can't lose your mind. You can't self-immolate, figuratively speaking, right? When you get bad news, you can't burn bridges, because everything in this world is cyclical. People that tell you they don't want you, they come back. People that say they didn't believe in you, apologize. People that you said you didn't believe in, they prove valuable to you. So I always try to stay even keel and never get too high or too low. Celebrate the wins. Don't get too low about the defeats. And I think that people that are willing to have self-belief, a little bit of patience, but never give up, like constantly evolving, will succeed. Like they'll find a way. And I think it's only, I've thought this for a long time, but being an entrepreneur and having those highs and lows and having people doubt me and having people come back, right? And me telling people that, hey, I don't think you're good enough. And then they prove me wrong, right? If anything, I've learned to be gracious, right? Have a little grace and just keep grinding, right? And keep learning, And I think that I can't wait to see what the next generation of AI and machine learning is going to do, as well as what these phones are going to do, because the camera on a smart device is really what allows me to do what I do. And as long as those things keep improving, our data, our accuracy, the information we're able to give you is going to continue to improve. So think about that for a minute. I'm building my company on the back of hardware that's only going to get better, which means that we're only going to get better, right? And the things that I've learned through trial and error in improving our algorithm, of course, things I'm not going to share with people, but I feel like it puts me so far ahead of the curve in regard to giving really good, personalized, on-demand, accurate, safe data, protected information. the future is so bright, and I just have to continue to have, character in adversity. As long as I have character in adversity and don't lose my mind in this process, which I don't think I ever will, I think this company is gonna do big things. I really believe that.
Well, Femi, we're so grateful for you sharing your clear enthusiasm and vision for this. I mean, obviously going back, I'm fired up, right? This is, no, it's true. Look, when two past guests, Matt Flanagan and Mason Plumlee, both gave you shout outs on the show, we knew we had to have you on, and I could clearly see why. They look up to you as young guys trying to find their way outside of their respective sports. And obviously you have, built that lighthouse for guys that are coming to you, and obviously have a very clear direction of where you want to take this business. So, with that, we would just like to thank you again for joining us on the game plan and for sharing your vision and your direction for HealthReel. Can you tell us where people can find HealthReel and how they can get onboarded and start living a better life?
Yeah, so we're still in beta right now. If people want to, they can go to healthreel.com, and that's HealthReel with 2 E's, not an A. So healthreel.com. And if you have an iPhone, just make sure you download Test Flight first, and you can use it for free right now. If you have an Android phone, you can go right to the Play Store and download it there. But if you actually go to my website, you can actually hear and read about kind of what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. We have our value proposition and mission statement up there. My background is kind of outlined there. So I think if you want to learn a little bit more about the company, definitely go to healthreel.com, and everything you need in regard to understanding what we do, how we do it, and who I am, as well as what the app does itself, all there in the on the website, on the webpage.
That's fantastic. We'll make sure we plug those in the show notes as well. Well, thank you again, Femi, for joining us, and we're looking forward to having you back once the whole round and everything is announced.
Yeah.
So you can share the progression of HealthReel in the coming days.
Yeah, guys, I think in April, be ready for like our go-to-market product. It's going to be amazing. I just hired a design team, a bunch of new engineers. Like, I'm so excited because this round should be done and closed, and we should be able to deploy some capital and make some things happen. So I'm excited.
There you go. Just in time for the end of the year. Well, awesome, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Femi.